Hey, everybody, welcome. Good morning from Middle Tennessee, where it is hot, humid. Summer is back with a vengeance. So I'll be sweating throughout this live stream, and I had to literally wait a couple minutes while my glasses unfogged from coming outdoors. So, hey, Vicky, good to see you. Um, so I'm just going to put it out there. I do this twice on Saturday mornings, and during the whole 30 minutes of the last one, a butterfly had landed on the back of my laptop camera and just sat there flapping his wings at me that whole time. Not only it was completely distracting, and I know that I was showing distraction. So hopefully, I mean, it was really kind of cool, especially since the whole chrysalis thing we've been working through this. Actually, we haven't been. I have been working through in regard to the journal this month. But anyway, so have you ever realized that you have been carrying around a story about yourself for years, one that is not even true? Hey, friends, welcome to From the Threshold. I am Renee Hill, and each Saturday I come to you from my own front porch, my literal threshold, to offer a moment of reflection for anyone navigating a creative life. My hope is that it becomes a place where you can reconnect with your own creative story with a little more wisdom and compassion. Wherever you're listening from, I am so glad that you're here. Last week, we were in the remember phase of our Art of Change series, and we talked about finding the threads from your past that you want to pull through, carry through the parts of you that have been quiet for a while, maybe, but still matter that you want to carry with you in the future. This week, we're moving into what I call the release phase, that moment when you set down outdated roles, false stories, and expectations that weigh you down. So today we're going to talk about why release matters, what makes it so hard, how creativity can help you do it, and in a way that your mind and your body actually register it as real change. I'm going to start with a personal story, one small moment that shaped my life for decades until I didn't have to carry it anymore. Oh my gosh, did he land on my hat? Yes, that's the butterfly is back. He flew right at my face. Um, all right, so I used the same story in my workshop last weekend, but when I was a few months out of college, I went to a conference in Chicago. A group of coworkers was with me. It was the summer of 1989 in the era of big name lavish parties with people like Hall & Oates playing at these after evening conference parties. This story is during the after party of one of those parties when we were closing down a downtown bar. The music was good. We were all dancing, even me, and this was not something that I did easily. I was really self-conscious. At one point on the crowded dance floor, I accidentally bumped into a guy, not someone I knew, random guy. He turned around and said something derogatory. I don't even remember what he said. It was a throwaway comment. He was probably drunk. But I remember how it made me feel. It landed like a punch. Here's the thing. When I was a little girl, a member of the New York City Ballet told my mom that I had talent. That was a real trained professional level evaluation. But that moment in Chicago, a drunk guy in a bar, that's the evaluation that stuck. It didn't matter that he was some random dude who had no idea what he was talking about. In my mind, this remark became truth. It settled in as part of my identity. I can't dance, and I definitely should not dance in public. And for the next 30 some years, I pretty much didn't. That's how these stories work. They don't have to be accurate. They don't have to come from someone who knows what they're talking about or knows you really well. Sometimes it's the most offhand remarks that cut the deepest. Looking back, I can see all the ways that I carried that story. If I was at a wedding, for example, I would stay in my seat as the dance floor filled up. I would watch everyone else having fun. It became much easier to avoid the possibility of embarrassment than to risk proving that story wrong. For a long time, I didn't even question it. It was just who I was. And because I didn't question it, I never gave myself the chance to see if it was still true or if it had ever been true in the first place. I missed a lot of joy along the way because of one random comment on a bar dance floor. The turning point came when I started doing deeper work on my identity. I realized how many of these little so-called truths that I had been carrying, they weren't really mine at all. They were hand-me-down stories, things that I had picked up from comments, criticism, or comparisons, and I had never stopped to ask if they really belonged to me or if I even wanted to carry them. The dance story is just one example, but we all have them. Maybe for you, it's something someone said about your voice, or your writing, or your body, or your personality, or your art. Maybe it's something that you overheard about yourself, wasn't even said directly to you. These moments can feel small when they happen, but over time they shape how we see ourselves, what we try, what we avoid, and the longer we carry them, the heavier that they get. Here's what I know now. I have permission to let that old false story go. It is not mine to carry anymore. And letting go doesn't erase the fact that it was part of my life for a very long time. And unfortunately, it does not make dancing any easier for me. It just means that it does not get to define me anymore. That's what we're talking about today, these roles or labels and stories that we have been carrying for years, maybe decades, without realizing that we can set them down. Times of change and transition are the perfect opportunity to release these stories. When we talk about release or letting go of roles or labels, things that no longer fit, it sounds simple. But in practice, it can be one of the hardest parts of change. So, why do we hold on to these things, especially if we know that they're weighing us down? First, because they once served a purpose. Some of the stories that we carry were coping mechanisms. They kept us safe, helped us belong, or made sense of a difficult season. Even if they're no longer true, they feel familiar, and familiar can feel safer than stepping out into the unknown. Second, because identity is sticky. When you've thought of yourself in a certain way for a long time, I shouldn't dance in public, I'm too loud, or I can't anything, fill in the blank, that identity starts to feel permanent. In many ways, it is permanent because it creates pathways, neural pathways in your brain that become part of a fixed portion of your anatomy. It becomes a box that you live in, even if you have outgrown that box. Third reason that they are hard, that we hold on to them, is because culture reinforces it. The world loves a tidy label. Once you have been put in a category by family or work or society, it is much easier for everyone if you just stay there. Breaking out of that not only changes how you see yourself, but it also forces other people to adjust how they see you. That can create resistance and pushback. So release isn't just about saying, I'm done with that and moving on. It would be so great if it were that easy, but it's not. It often brings grief. You might grieve the time that you lost living under a false story. You might grieve the relationships or opportunities tied to that old role. You might even grieve the certainty that came with it because as limiting as it was perhaps predictable. And then there's fear. If I am not this, then who even am I? That unknown can feel bigger and scarier than the comfort of the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. So this is the release phase that we're talking about in my Rediscover You framework. The moment when you intentionally loosen your grip on old narratives. It's not passive. You don't just decide and then wait for those old roles stories to fade. You have to make a conscious choice and then actively walk a path from this defined me to this is no longer mine and this is who I am moving forward. Release is also not about erasing your past. You don't have to pretend that those roles or stories never existed, but it is about reclaiming your right to decide what defines you today and what you want to take with you into tomorrow. We live in a culture that prizes pushing forward, adding more, taking on new things. But if your arms are already full of outdated baggage, there's no room for what's next. I sometimes think of it like hauling around a suitcase that's been with you for years. It's worn, it's comfortable, and at first it was packed with what you needed, exactly what you wanted to take along. But over time, the useful things got buried under clutter. And if you never stop to unpack it, you end up dragging all that extra weight with you wherever you go. Release is that moment when you open up that suitcase and you sift through the things that are inside and you decide what you choose to leave behind and what is no longer helpful or healthy for you. I want you to really hear this clearly. You do not have to carry every story you've been told about yourself, or every story that you have decided at some point is true. Some of them aren't yours. Some of them never were. Some of them might have been, but they no longer fit. And every time that you set one down, you make space for something better to take its place. So let's talk for a moment about why creativity is such a powerful tool for doing this. You can just try to decide to let that story go, but our brains don't really work that way. Old stories are stored not only in our conscious memory, but in our body and our nervous system. That's why a symbolic, creative act can be so effective. It involves your whole self. When you take an abstract intention, I'm letting go of this, and give it a tangible action, your brain treats it as something real. It creates a physical memory of release, and that memory becomes something that you can return to, a marker in your story. It's not about doing something cute or fluffy. It's about using the way that your brain and your body process change to your advantage. Ritual and creativity have been part of human transformation for thousands of years because they work. So let's talk about how you can actually do this. How to take a role, a label, or a story that you no longer want to carry, really tangible and memorable. The key here is to make more than just a thought in your head. You want it to become an action that your body and your mind register as complete. That's where this creative ritual comes in. So I'm going to give you some steps. First step is choose the story or the role. Get specific. The more clearly you can name it, the easier it is to release. Instead of saying, I'm letting go of self-doubt, you might say, I'm letting go of the habit of talking myself out of opportunities before I even try because I doubt that I can handle it. Write it down in one sentence. I am no longer someone who, fill in the blank. I am no longer someone who. Step 2 is to create a symbol. Turn that sentence into something visual or physical. Write it on a slip of paper. Stitch the word onto a scrap of fabric, the words. Paint or draw an image that represents it, or create a word collage from magazine clippings. This does not need to be pretty or perfect. You are not making it to show anyone or to hang in a gallery. You are just giving shape to something invisible. Step 3 is release it physically. Once it exists in physical form and you have something that represents that old story, it's time to let it go in a way that your body will remember. Tear it into small pieces and throw it away. Cut the thread or fabric scrap in half. Paint over the image, crumple and throw away the collage. Burn the paper in a safe container and watch the smoke rise. The point is to do something irreversible that says, this is no longer mine to carry. And then we replace it intentionally. This is step 4. In the arts-based nonprofit that I work with, we use a framework that we don't have a fancy name for it. We call it make, break, restore. We probably should get a fancy name for it. We use it for a different purpose. We teach people that beautiful things can come out of brokenness. But the make, break, restore framework works really well in the situation too. Nature and your mind don't like a vacuum. When you remove something, you create space for something else. And we want to fill that space intentionally. You just made something and destroyed it in some way if you have proceeded through that ritual. You made it and you destroyed it. Now you can either make something brand new to fill that story or belief void that you have created, or you can take what you destroyed and transform it into something new. Something new might be to write down a new sentence. I am someone who, and finish it with a truth that you want to carry forward. If you're transforming that destroyed thing, it might look like stitching a new symbol on top of where you removed the old one, or painting over the old painting with a new layer that represents what you're welcoming in. This step turns release into transformation. You are not just putting something down, you are also picking something better up. Releasing that story is powerful, but in order to make that stick, you have to go further. You have to anchor that new story in your mind over time as it starts, so your brain starts treating it as truth. So here is a way to do that. I'm sure there are others. First, you have to name it clearly. Write your new story in a short, present tense sentence. Keep it positive and personal. Don't say something like, I'm going to, or I will. You want to say, I am. Currently, I am. For example, I trust my instincts and I share my work freely. Repeat that daily. Say that sentence to yourself out loud before you begin your creative work. Write it in your journal in the mornings. Post it somewhere that you will see it frequently. Your mirror, your sewing machine, your sketchbook, or your phone. Pair it with an action. Take one small step that embodies that new story. If your new story is, I share my work freely, post a photo of your work without over editing and without apologizing. If it's, I try new things without fear, then start a project that you have been hesitating on. Put action behind this new story over time. I won't go into the neuroscience of it. And 4, create a sensory anchor. Choose something physical that reminds you of this shift. Maybe it's a stone on your desk, a song that you play before creating, or a piece of jewelry that you wear when stepping into that identity. Let it become a cue that says, this is who I am now, a reminder. What it is doesn't actually matter. It's the meaning that you put behind it. By reinforcing this new story in these small ways over time consistently, you help your brain and your body build new pathways that support this identity that you have chosen. So let's talk about why this step works, the whole release idea. It's not just a silly ceremony. This kind of creative ritual has nothing to do with being dramatic or mystical. It's about using how your brain and body work to help you make change stick. It uses pattern completion. Your brain loves closure. When you give it a clear before and after, it registers that shift as finished. It uses multi-sensory engagement, so it involves all of your senses, sight, touch, sound, and this creates a stronger memory of the release. It uses embodied cognition. Your body dramatically influences your mind. Physically enacting the release helps your nervous system understand that this old role or this story is actually over. It uses emotional encoding. Pairing a physical act with an emotional intention helps lock in that new belief. Humans have been using these kinds of symbolic acts to mark transitions for thousands of years. Graduations, weddings, funerals, even blowing out birthday candles. These moments are more than just tradition. They are psychological anchors. They tell us something important has just happened. So when you do your own release ritual, you're giving yourself that same kind of anchor. You're saying, I am crossing this threshold and I can come back to this moment in my memory if I ever need reminding. So if you've never done something like this before, keep it simple. Pick one story, make one symbol, and release it in a way that feels final to you. You can do it privately, with someone you trust as a witness. The point isn't to make it elaborate. There's no one right way to do it. It's not to make it public. The whole point is to make it intentional and personal. If you try it, notice how you feel afterwards. Maybe you'll feel lighter right away. But don't be surprised if you don't. Don't be surprised if you have to notice small changes over the next weeks or months to come. You might have more willingness to try something new or less hesitation in a familiar situation. Be gentle with yourself, though. Your mind and your body and your emotions are adapting. They are learning a new way of being, and that can take time. If you're not sure what story or role or label that you want to release, or you feel like there are a few stories competing for your attention, here's some questions to help you figure out where to start. Take them slowly. You don't need to answer them all at once. Sometimes the more valuable insights are gained after just sitting with a question for a period of time. So here they are. What role or story or label am I still carrying that no longer fits? Think about how you describe yourself, out loud or in your own head. What descriptions feel outdated or untrue? Question them all. How did that become part of my identity? Was it something someone told you? Something that you decided after a single experience? Or a role that you took on because it was expected? What purpose did it once serve? Even unhelpful stories usually had a job. At some point, they were protecting you from risk, helping you belong, giving you structure, and naming that purpose can help you let it go with less resistance. What is it costing me? Be honest about what it keeps you from doing, trying, or becoming. And if I set it down, what might open up in its place? Let yourself imagine what would be possible if this old role or story no longer took up space in your life. You can write those answers in a journal, talk through them with a friend, or just think about them on a quiet walk. The goal is not to rush into action, but to bring clarity to what's already ready to be released. So your creative ritual has this clear, specific focus. So before we wrap up, I want to remind you of the important truths from today. It's been a longer than normal episode. First, you don't have to carry every role, label, or story that you have ever been given. You get to choose. Two, many of those stories were never yours. They were picked up along the way from offhand comments or outdated expectations. Three, release is not erasing your past. It is making an intentional choice about what will or will not define you going forward. Four, a creative symbolic act of release can help your mind and body register that shift, and reinforcing the new story helps it take root. So if you try this, remember, keep it simple, specific, and intentional. And if you want to go deeper in using creativity to navigate change, last week's Who Am I Now workshop was so much fun, and it's now available as a self-paced online workshop. You can find it at liminallinks.com/whoaminow-ws, and I'll put that in the below because I know it's complex. If you go to Who Am I Now, you get to the journal. If you go to whoaminow-ws, stands for workshop, you get to the workshop. So next week, the butterfly is back. That's a different butterfly. Next week, we're going to continue the Art of Change series with the reveal phase, where we explore your inner voice and seeing what emerges once you've cleared space through release. And of course, I will be right back here again on the threshold next Saturday. If you would like to come on back for that, I would love to have you. Until then, stay passionately curious. All right, so I'm not sure if I said hello. Oh my gosh, there he is again. There, I shouldn't have put my hand up. He's my companion for the day. It's amazing. I'm not sure if I said hello or not, but hello to Tim. Hello to Vicky. Thank you guys for being here. I so appreciate you hanging out with me this morning. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.